We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Hi, Tig. We've been talking about doing this one for a little while. People have probably, many of you have already seen our episode on Axis and Allies, which is my favorite board game of all time. And you can check out a link to that one below. But I actually wanted to do something a little different. They're going to do like a buyer's guide. For people who want to get into Axis and Allies, you're not sure what edition to get, or maybe you want to start collecting them, because there's actually a lot of versions of Axis and Allies out there. So if you want to like get into this game. Starting off, of course, I mean, this is the classic. This is the one that people of our era remember. And the good thing about this is you can often find this on eBay for 20 bucks.
Wow.
It was such a big seller and it sold for so many years. It's super easy to find the original version of this game.
But you can't go in the store and find this anymore?
Correct. You can no longer buy this new. They don't make the game this way anymore.
That's a shame.
The rules are now different. There's some slight differences in the pieces and stuff like that. Blah, blah, blah. So you can't get this version anymore new. But it's really easy to find it used. I mean, I own 3 copies of
course.
of this, the original version. And again, like, hop on eBay, and if you don't see it right away for 20 bucks, just wait a couple days. It pops up routinely.
Yeah, everyone's always getting rid of it.
For very low amount of money stuff. So that's the classic original. So after the classic original came out, in the 90s, I believe it was, they came out with what they called the revised version. And that's this. You'll see this in blue box, revised version. And it's pretty much the original version of the game with some slight rule tweaks. I believe this edition, it added artillery and destroyer units, which were not in the original version of the game. And they just...
And this one is for sale still?
No, this one is also no longer in print, no longer for sale. You can occasionally find this relatively cheap on eBay. You'll spend, like, sometimes you'll spend between 100 and 150 bucks for this one. But sometimes they'll slip through the cracks on eBay and you can get this for about like 20 to 30, 40-ish bucks. I actually don't recommend this version of the game.
Okay.
Take a pass. And there's a few reasons for that. The rule set in this one is not perfect. They tried to revise it and streamline it and improve on the original, but
it didn't work too well.
I think the original, like, flaws and all, works just fine. But the main reason why I don't recommend this one is because I think the board is ugly as hell. That is not a good looking board. It's
hard to look at. It's very dark.
I don't like the dark colors and the weird borders, and I hate this board. I just don't like this board at all. So I don't recommend getting this one unless you are a collector and you have to have,
like Eric,
you have to have everything Axis and Allies. And in that case, then of course, yeah, then you get it. Look, like even the battle boards and stuff, just really ugly design. It's just they're not
very dark.
Yeah,
everything's I'm gonna guess. Is this the 90s?
Yes.
You could just, right? Because like the dark and everything.
Yeah, it's just not a good. It's not a good look. I think the only big selling point of this game at the time was that it added the artillery and the destroyers. And destroyers were cool because they have sort of anti-submarine capabilities, and artillery mixed up the game a little bit. And so it felt like it was advancing the game a touch. But, in addition to this, came out a little while after this, and this is the one edition of the game that I don't have, so I can't actually show it to you. And the reason why I don't have it is because now it sells for about $500.
Wait, why?
It was very limited when it came out. Even when it came out, it was like $100 brand new, and that's why I didn't get it. I was like, well, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. And then by the time I hedged for a little while, it was gone.
Yeah.
So and that's the anniversary edition, and the anniversary edition like incorporated all these rules plus a bunch of other stuff. It added like some new nations. I think I think China. I don't remember if that one had Italy. I think China and Italy were added as playable nations in that one. Bigger map. Like a very cool edition of the game. I've checked out the rules. Looks real like a great edition of the game, and I would love to have it. But again, that version routinely sells for about $500. So. Unless you're a hardcore collector and you're trying to complete a collection, don't even.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Don't think about it. Whatever. So right around the time, roughly, that the revised edition came out, they also put out a couple of editions that focused on specific theaters. So the first one was Axis and Allies Europe, and that's kind of self-explanatory, right?
Takes place in Asia.
Axis and Allies was a global game, but Europe focused entirely on the European theater, so it was really just about that, that whole conflict, the Eastern Front. It introduced some cool new rules that aren't in other versions of the game, like convoys, and so you can do that whole bit with the war with like the Germans interrupting shipping. This was a really cool addition to the game.
And is this one of your favorite ones? Is this one of the favorite ones to play for you?
I like this one a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, I like this one a lot. This version is not in print anymore, but it's not too difficult to find. Again, you hit up eBay, you won't spend a lot on this one. You can routinely get this, I think, for about $40, $50 bucks or so. That's the price of a board game.
Right.
Actually cheaper in a lot of cases. Board games can get pretty expensive these days. But this is a really cool edition of the game. The cool thing about this edition of the game is that if you've played the original Axis and Allies, you can jump into this one. No problem.
Okay.
The rules are close to identical. Huh. You just have to get used to some of the simple changes. Similar, of course, was Axis and Allies Pacific. Same basic concept, except
takes place in the Indian Ocean.
This one also had a really cool board. I actually like this one more than Europe.
I know you're a fan of the Pacific Theater.
I do, yeah. I like the Pacific Theater. This also introduces some cool new rules. You have fleets and you have naval stations. So it's it's got some slight changes in the rules. But again, just like Europe, it's still the basic rule
so
system.
that must have been a big deal when that came out.
Yeah, I think among Axis and Allies fans, these were fantastic twists on the classic games. And again, just like Europe and Revised Edition, this is no longer in print in this version, but it's very easy to find. This one's a little more difficult to find than Axis and Allies Europe. This one is slightly scarcer, but again, you're probably not going to pay more than $50 for this. And sometimes on a good day, you'll find it for around 30 or so. So after the Europe and Pacific versions of the game came out, they decided to get really specific. And they came out with a couple of twists on the game that get down to specific battles. All three of these that we're going to go through, and they're very specific editions, are out of print. And unfortunately, all of them are relatively difficult to find.
And expensive, I assume, then.
They tend to be a little pricey. So the first one that came out was Axis and Allies DDay. Pretty obvious what that one, what that's all about. So this
took place at the beginning of World War II.
Right. This is just focused on D-Day. The thing about this is that it is much different. The rules are much different than the classic game.
Someone like me who hasn't played them probably shouldn't start with this.
If you want an Axis and Allies experience, these are much different. The rules are much different. Okay. And you can even tell by the board.
Oh, jeez.
It's a cool board.
It is really awesome looking. That'd be cool to hang up on a wall.
Yeah, I mean, a really cool map. Really cool board. Differs from the core game in a lot of ways. For anyone who's watched a previous video and who isn't familiar with the game Axis and Allies, you've got your world map and you conquer territories, and each territory is worth a certain amount of money, and you use that money to buy more troops and you fight the war. That's not how D-Day, for instance, works.
Okay.
D-Day has a specific number of turns, and each turn there's a specified units that come in. So it's the waves of the invasion. So that's like one huge difference, for instance. You've got these cards. It's got this whole card system that has to do with the actions that you're taking and the maneuvers that you can do. It's a much different take on Axis and Allies. It's in a lot of ways, it's Axis and Allies in name only. It's a cool edition of the game, though. If you're super hardcore in Axis and Allies, you can check it out. But again, it's out of print. You can sometimes catch it for around 70, 80, but don't be surprised if you're more often seeing it for around 100, 120. I really don't play this edition of the game.
So it's...
If I want to do D-Day or something like that, I play Memoir 44. This I bought mostly because it has Axis and Allies written on it.
Right.
Which, speaking of, and it's sort of a segue, but I do have to clarify in this, some years back, an Axis and Allies miniatures game came out. And it's sort of like collectible miniatures where you have these really nicely detailed little tanks and units and stuff like that. And it has the Axis and Allies name. Completely different game, has nothing to do with the board games. It just shares that name. So often when you're on, let's say, eBay looking for Axis and Allies stuff, you'll get a ton of that comes up too.
Okay.
But it's a different game. It's not related to the stuff we're talking about today, and I'm not going to go into it. Never got into the game, never played it, and it is not part of the board game the set of board games.
He wants to set that straight because
I'm gonna set it straight.
if you did, then you'd have to collect it, and therefore your collection isn't complete.
That's right too. Yeah, I'm not diving down that well. Not diving down that well. So after D-Day came out, appropriately enough, because this was after D-Day, was Axis and Allies Battle of the Bulge.
Which took place in Vietnam, obviously.
Of course, as it does. This is, again, like D-Day, it's much different than the actual core game.
Right.
The rule system is very different, and it's not the same as D-Day, too.
Okay.
So again, this
Not the same gameplay as what we just saw?
Correct.
Okay.
Again, they completely mixed it up for this game. A good thing that you can see just how different it is. 12-sided die instead of 6-sided die. Axis and Allies at its core, it's always standard dice. This one uses 12-sided.
And this is the first one kind of that did that?
First and only. Yeah, the board is very cool.
Oh, I like the board.
You're right.
That's cool.
Cool board.
It takes place. Okay.
Yeah, cool board. So you can recreate, Band of Brothers. And you can see it's a hex-based map.
Oh, okay.
Which
got the Catan kind of thing going on.
Yeah, it's a cool version of the game, actually. The rules are really interesting. You've got to deal with supply lines and zones of control, which is something
cool.
Something that Axis and Allies has never done before or since. So actually, this is a really cool addition to the game. I don't play it as often as I'd like, but this is a really cool version. But again, does not represent the core Axis and Allies experience, and out of print. You'll routine this one. You're gonna spend about $100 to $150 to get this one. So,
what's your favorite part about that game?
The supply lines and zones of control.
Okay.
Because the whole way to win in this, like as the Germans, if you're familiar with the Battle of the Bulge, you're pushing through the lines, and so the Germans have to push through far enough and get a large enough zone of control. That's how they win the game, and the Allies have to sort of keep them contained. And part of that, you have to keep your supply lines open to make that work. It's just a really cool system. I think it works. I believe, and I'd have to check the book to be sure, but I believe all of these are designed by Larry Harris, the designer of the original game. So it's it's connected in that way.
Right.
But if this is much different than
all the original and
right. So the third in that series of more individual Axis and Allies editions was Axis and Allies Guadalcanal,
which takes place in Australia, obviously.
Clearly, I mean, duh. Interesting version of the game. Okay, so the first thing for collectors and stuff like that, good luck. This one's really hard to find. It's out of print. When you do find it, this one routinely will go for anywhere from $175 to $250.
That's crazy.
They didn't make a lot of them. It didn't sell well. I don't think it's particularly popular among Axis and Allies players either.
How about with you?
I don't think it's a very good rule system. And I will say up front, I have to, just for full disclosure, I have not actually played a full game of this.
Okay.
I've gone over the rules a couple times because I like reading board game rule books for some reason. And I really wanted to like this because I love this theater and I love the whole idea. I'm a big fan of this.
Oh, yeah.
Cool map, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
The objective of this is to control these airfields.
Okay.
So you have to control a certain number of airfields and knock out a certain number of the enemy's capital ships, aircraft carriers and battleships, in order to win. But it plays, again, it's unique in the whole ANA system.
Yeah, they just make a whole new rule system up for this.
Yeah, and I'm not a big fan of the way this rule system works. Don't want to get too deep into it for this particular video, but way different. The way you fight is completely different. It does have it does have one really cool thing related to the combat, just because it's sort of quirky and gimmicky, right? Dice box, and then you pull this out, and depending on the dice are face up to show what you have in here. Tells you what it hit, depending on the rolls.
Is that to speed it up for you, so you don't have to do it yourself, kind of thing?
No, it's part of the rule system. And
wow. When someone comes up with that, you kind of feel a little bit.
It's kind of like quirky and neat, but not actually interesting, and made me really disinclined to want to play this version of the game. So again, full disclosure, I have not played this edition of the game, and I'm not in any rush to either. For me, I bought this for completionist sake.
Right, of course.
I had to have all of them. So like I said, the last thing left for me is the anniversary edition, and I would have to not tell the wife about that one. These are the currently in print editions. So when you go into a gaming store or bookstores, sell Axis and Allies now, or you go on Amazon or something, these are currently available.
Okay, that's cool.
So these are the ones that you can actually buy now if you want to get new games instead of hitting up eBay. So I'm going to go through a few different editions of the game. The first one is one that a lot of us longtime fans were dying for them to do, and they finally did it a couple years back. This is Axis and Allies 1914. So Axis and Allies is a World War II game, except obviously this one is not. This is a World War I edition of the game, and this is really cool.
Yeah, you like this one?
Love this version of the game. Just recently had an epic week-long battle with my son with this game.
I saw it on the tape downstairs.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's pretty much like the core edition of the rules, so if you've played Axis and Allies before, you can easily jump in and play this, but with some really interesting
twists,
changes that, make it World War I unique. The biggest one is when you normally in Axis and Allies, the two, armies come together and they fight in some territory, and you just keep rolling dice until
someone runs out.
Yeah, until someone's blown up, and then you capture the territory. In this, when a fight ensues, when someone invades another territory, you only roll one round of dice, and if one side isn't completely wiped out, that area then becomes contested, and you're just there locked in battle. And so you can be locked in battle in on a front like that for 4, 5, 6, 7 turns endlessly. Huh. So I mean, we had like on the front in France where we were just locked in battle. So every turn you just do one set of dice rolls.
And is that to purposely prolong it?
It's sort of recreating that the idea of the trenches in No Man's Land.
Okay, yeah, because it's World War I, right?
Yeah, so you're just sort of stuck there,
right?
Because units weren't very mobile and stuff like that. The board in this version of the game is really cool. It's a 2-board set. Really big board on this game. Really big board.
It's pretty though.
Yeah, looks really cool. 8 nations, up to 8 nations, so you can play with up to 8 players, 2 to 8 players. Really cool version of the game. I really love the twists in these rules. Oh, you son of a... Jeez, come on. People who aren't familiar with this edition of the game, you've got the Ottoman Empire, Germany, the Russians, Austria-Hungary, the Brits, Italy, the United States, and France. Comes with tons and tons of dice because...
Oh, that's what's in there? Dice?
Yeah, the dice rolls are endless in this game. Endless. You get unit stacks that are like... I mean, we were having wars where it was like 40 and 50 units on either side.
Geez.
It was ridiculous. But a really cool version of the game. I highly recommend this. For any Axis and Allies fan who has not played this, get it. It's... I want to say it runs between 80 and 100 new. I can't remember the exact price. But you get what you pay for. I mean, this thing has, over 400 units, tons of pieces, really nice map.
And what is the playtime?
It claims on the box, it says 1 to 3 hours.
Yeah, that's not happening.
The last game that we played, I finally surrendered. We could have kept going, but I finally surrendered, and I think we were at somewhere between 8 to 12 hours.
Wow.
It's a long game. But it's a really cool edition of the game. I actually highly recommend this one. There's some slight downsides, or just it actually doesn't come with enough pieces. But if you're already an Axis and Allies player, you probably have another edition of the game, and so you can sub in pieces. That's what we did, and it works fine. So that's what you do with this one. Really cool edition of the game though, and it's still available. It's relatively new, only came out a couple of years ago. So yeah, get that one. Okay, so now these are the core versions of Axis and Allies. The current ones, the new ones. The first one is Axis and Allies 1941. This is a cool edition of the game. I think the last time I checked the price on Amazon, $16.
16 now.
$16, 20 bucks in a gaming store, and you'll spend between like 16 and 20 bucks.
Now, why is that one so cheap?
It was purposely made to be a cheaper version of the game. Now, this gives you the core Axis and Allies experience, but it's a stripped down version of Axis and Allies. So what that means is it's a smaller board.
Yeah.
And longtime players will recognize instantly when you look at the actual territories. There's far fewer territories. They get fewer pieces. The game is just minimalized. It's like a minimal version of A&A. It's stripped down, so there's not a lot of pieces. The rules are made easier. It's meant for new players. This is the one that I recommend for new players to the game who you're kind of intrigued by it, but you don't know that you want to dump the money into playing it yet. And this is also a cool version of the game for longtime fans who love Axis and Allies, but you can't dump like 6 and 10 hours into these epic games. You want to be able to sit down and like in a single sitting with some friends finish a game. You can wrap up a game in under 2 hours. This is everything, and then a few dice. That's it. So it's a stripped down version of the game. Great edition of the game. Like I'd recommend this for someone who just wants to try it out and get into it. So 1941 is the introductory version of the game. The new core edition of the game is Axis and Allies 1942, second edition.
That looks very similar to the one we just looked at. Yes.
This is the core edition of Axis and Allies. For players who are fans or who want the real Axis and Allies experience, this is the one that you get. Still in print. I think it runs $40 to $50. Maybe it's around 60, but it's the price of a board game.
Yeah.
Lots more units. And a very cool epic sized board. I mean, that's a gorgeous map.
It is pretty.
That's a really gorgeous map. For longtime players who are like still playing the old version of the game, the original, and who don't have this one, should you get it? I say yes.
Okay.
I recommend it, and there's a few reasons why.
Why don't you tell us?
I think I might. Adds new units, so you've got destroyers, cruisers, and artillery. Anti-aircraft guns. So it expands what was there.
And that wasn't in the original.
Correct. None of that stuff was in the original. So getting all the new units is really cool. The rule system is much improved, though the instruction book stinks. Yeah, but it introduces like new stuff, some slight new tweaks to the rule system, proves existing rules, and yet it still plays exactly like Axis and Allies. That's cool. So if you've been playing Axis and Allies for many years, you will be up and running in 5 minutes with this. Yeah, this is the one, and this is imprint, current. You can get it now, like pretty much everywhere. Cool. For the price, I mean, it comes with gorgeous maps and cool units and stuff. This is the one. Okay, so last but certainly not least, and these are really cool. It's actually 2 different games, but I'm gonna kind of present them together because they go together. And these are for the hardcore Axis and Allies fans. These are the people who who have been playing it for years, because these are
not for noobs.
This is not for noobs. These are more complex than any Axis and Allies game made to date. It's huge. They're enormous, and also you're going to invest some money. I think the prices recently came down, so I think these now are run about 70 to 80 each, but sometimes it's like 90 to $100 each. So if you're going to get them both, and you want them both,
you can play them separate.
You can play them separately, but the cool thing is that they go together. So they are, and again, these are in print, currently available. Axis and Allies, Europe 1940, and Pacific 1940. So you remember before we looked at Europe and Pacific, same.
They're combining them for
same basic concept. Each one is focused on just that side of the globe. Now, that's what I was talking about before, how the years are misleading. These are 1940.
Okay.
So you would think like 1940 would be the easier one, and the 41, 42, but no.
No, they're just all over the map.
Yeah, exactly. All over the map. God. These games add like lots of new rules and lots of new units. Just a bunch of stuff. It just adds tons of complexity to the game. So this is just Europe, right? The other one, Pacific, has a map also this size. And this is something that when they first put out the original versions of Europe and Pacific, people were like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if you can join them together? But they weren't designed that way. This was designed that way. So you can take Pacific and put it here so that you have all 4 of these boards together, and it turns into a global version of the game. They have rules they call the global rules.
So there's different rules when you put them together.
Yeah, when you put them together, like it's a new, even they're a rule set. And with these versions of the game have like, the basic Axis and Allies. You have the United Kingdom, Russia, the United States, Germans, and Japan. With these, you also get France, you get Italy, you get Australia, New Zealand, you get China, greatly expands like the countries that you can be.
So you can have up to 10 people playing.
Yeah, it's pretty huge. The games are enormous. They take forever. You need a huge table. Like our family kitchen table, when you actually lay this board out, it sticks out slightly on all sides. So we actually need a second end table for the dice and rules and all other sort of stuff. It's absurd. So you can see, China is its own country now in this version of the game with its own rules and units. You have the Burma Road, which is this whole new rule. There's these capital cities that are all over the maps that are involved. Yeah, I mean, look at that. That's awesome. And they're great looking maps too.
Yeah, they are. They're very pretty.
Now there's something you have to know about these editions of the game. There is the ones that I'm showing you now, and then there's also, and this is what you'll find when you go to Amazon, it's going to be Europe 1940 and Pacific 1940 second edition. Don't worry about that. It's the exact same game, just with some minor adjustments.
Oh, they changed. Okay, so the ones that you have, they don't make anymore.
Correct.
But you can get the second edition version of them.
Right. Technically, the boxes that I'm showing you are out of print editions, but it's not a significant difference.
Okay.
It's just some slight rule changes. One of the main things is like on the map, they add something along the top of the map to track the income. That makes it easier to track income,
okay.
Which is a really great addition. But if you're a complete newbie and you're not 100% sure if you want to get into the game, get 1941. That's a streamlined version. 1941 is what you want. If you know you like Axis and Allies, or you're an experienced board gamer, but you haven't never played Axis and Allies, but you want to play it, then you want to get 1942 second edition. And that's relatively affordable and easily available. And if you're a longtime Axis and Allies fan who wants like the Gazanga experience, then you want these two. That's my Axis and Allies buying guide.
The Eric San Juan Axis and Allies buying guide.
That's right. And if anyone has the anniversary edition that you want to sell to me for much less than it goes for.
So if anyone out there has the Axis and Allies anniversary edition, you gotta talk to this guy. Because he's dying to get it.
But I will not pay you $500 for it. I will not. So there you go. Axis and Allies Buyer's Guide. Hope you enjoy it.
Thank you, Eric, for delving us into the lands of Axis and Allies.
All right.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.